Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by 4-Wheel Parts. Today, we're going to be talking about a big decision that you have to make. And the fact that you're here right now listening to this show means you're already pretty far along on this decision path. Perhaps you've already committed to it, in which case the show is going to serve as a little bit of a validation for you. Or maybe you're just getting ready to take your first step. Either way, I think this show is going to be particularly valuable for you. The decision you need to make, this is it right here. Is motorsports sponsorship right for you? Is this a commitment that you're willing to make? Are you ready to dive in fully? We're going to talk about some of the sacrifices and then ultimately the rewards of taking this path. But first, I want to give you a quick message about 4-Wheel Parts, the title sponsor for the show. Right now, they are running a promotion, Get Dialed for Summer. And they've got a lot of good discounts out there right now. So one of them is $250 off the purchase of a set of 4 Pro Comp tires. Another $100 off of a set of 4 BF Goodrich tires. So whichever tire package you want there, good deal. Buy 3, get 1 free on Pro Comp wheels, because you're going to need wheels when you get bigger tires. And you get to save up to $500 on specific select suspension systems. So check those things out if you're ready for a lift. And speaking about being ready for a lift, you can get 10% off a Ready Lift. See what I did there? And also 10% off Smittyville products. And then the last thing I'll just talk about is another wheel package, which is 30% off LRG wheels. So if you add all these things to your cart and you realize, holy cow, it's a lot of money, how am I going to cover this? They do offer financing. They got 6 months interest-free financing promo running right now. So you can find out more at bit.ly/2UJBLSL, and if for whatever reason you can't get all that down, go to 4wheelpart.com, or you can call 1-800-284-9840. Now, this show is all about making sure you have the information you need to make good decisions about your sponsorship program. 4-Wheel Parts and I are putting together packages to make sure that you have the right information from the right people at the right time. So we can't do that alone, though. 4-Wheel Parts is a big part of the show, but there's several other companies that really come together to make this thing possible. So I'm going to thank them right now. AMSOIL, they provide amazing lubrication products, and they're a company that runs on freedom. You can find out more at amsoil.com/rider. SolderWeld, they produce game-changing metal bonding technology, and they're ready to rescue your race. TopThePodium.com, they're experts in motorsports sponsorship and website creation. They've done our website as well. Bold Racing, they're a family race team and GSP XTV axle specialists. And then Crash Act Industries, they provide human protection and extreme racing products. I also want to shout out some of our other partners: MBRP, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, GSP XTV, Diode Dynamics, and High Octane Coffee. And I would love to get your feedback on the show. Do you like the content? Do you like where things are headed? Do you just want to give some general notes? Head over to iTunes, leave a rating and a review. But also you can shoot me an email, josh@sponsoredriderclubpodcast.com. Now it's actually time to get into the show, but first we're going to start with your High Octane Coffee marketing tune-up. This segment features Joey Sylvester of High Octane Coffee, and he gives you a tidbit of sponsorship advice. This is going to be, I believe, the 4th episode that we've had this built in. A lot of fun, good little tidbits of information. You can find out more about Joey at Joe Sylvester 8, or you can find out more at High Octane Coffee. Check it out.
What's up, guys? Joe Sylvester here with your High Octane Coffee marketing tune-up of the day. Today I want to talk about your brand, your personal brand, and the type of fans that you have. Your fans, your followers on social media, those are the customers for your sponsors. So you need to think about companies and brands that align with your personality, your personal image, and your personal brand. Don't approach companies that you don't really using their product, you don't understand, or it doesn't fit with your image. Only approach companies that are going to align with not only your brand, but also your fans and your followers. You know, if your fans are very, blue collar America, pickup trucks, cowboy boots, maybe a wine type of crowd isn't really going to be a good sponsor for you. That's going to be a different type of demographic. Same as, a flower shop for me. I'm a very abrasive personality. I have a certain type, of fans and followers on my social media. So I always try to work with brands and companies that align with my image and the people that associate with me.
Okay, it's time to get into the topic today, and I'm doing the show solo because it's just something I really wanted to talk about with you and really dive into some of the details. I was recently having a conversation. This was probably about 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure now, but it was enough where I wrote it down as a note. Like, I need to talk about this in the show one day. And I've been thinking a lot about this conversation. I was talking to somebody about, is it really right for them to go after a motorsport sponsorship? Like, they were trying to determine if it was even worth it, right? And they started going through some of the commitments that are involved. And I was like, man, that's legitimate. There's probably a number of people who are having the same thought process in their head. Maybe they've been doing this for, 10, 20 years. Like, is it still worth to continue? Or, maybe they're just getting ready to start and they're like, is this worth it? So I want to unpack that in this episode. I want to talk about if motorsports sponsorship is right for you or still right for you. And that's what we're going to, kind of walk through. I got a lot of different segments on this that we're going to hit on. But I imagine if you are new to this topic or this show that you're going to be like, oh, buddy, what's coming? Maybe you're excited or nervous or both. I don't know. We'll go through all those feelings. But, if you are feeling validated by the show, you're like, yep. Like, feel free to nod your head along. If you do have questions after listening to this, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach me on email, josh@sponsoredriderclubpodcast.com, or I'm on Twitter and Facebook at Sponsored Rider Club Podcast. So any questions, you could definitely divert that way. But honestly, just the fact that you're listening to the show right now, you've got this far, right? That's a good sign that motorsports sponsorship is right for you. You've committed to that. Unless you read the title for the show and you're like, what's sponsored rider? Like, what's this? and apparently you're a surfer dude, because that's what you sound like if you're a surfer dude. You've gotten this far. You know that motorsports sponsorship is pretty intriguing. I've been talking about it for a couple of years now. 2+ years, so I obviously think it's intriguing too. But it can be extremely rewarding. Motorsports sponsorship can be very, very rewarding, but it does come at a cost. This stuff does consume time and energy. If it's right for you, then you're going to find it also creates opportunities for better use of your time and new ways to expel that energy. But now we need to discuss a little bit more about what it will take going forward, and then at that point you can decide if you want to proceed or not. Okay, now we're going to dive into what it takes. I will cover benefits later, so this first section here is going to be maybe a little overwhelming, like, wow, I didn't think about that, or like, whew, sounds exhausting. But I do get into the benefits in a minute here, so just hang tight for that. But yeah, there's several things I want to talk about around what it takes. So basically 5 main points that I want to dive into. The first one is knowing your brand. And honestly, in the intro for this show, Joey Sylvester talked a little bit about knowing what your brand is and which sponsors you should contact as a result. So that is a big part of this. You have to put some effort into knowing what your brand really is, or at least committing to discover and define what that brand is. I've done shows where I've talked about this in the past, and I've actually had a show specifically on this first point here. What is your discipline? That is very critical. I did a show, does the discipline even matter, right? If you go back, you can listen to that. Does your discipline even matter? Is there really even a purpose for choosing that? And to an extent, it does, right? It does matter. I think you can do a lot of different disciplines, but you have to select something. Maybe it's multiple things, but you have to understand what that is. Are you a supercross racer? Are you multidisciplinary, meaning like, do you do car racing in the summer? Like, Leah Bauer does, and then you do snowmobile racing in the winter. I don't know. You got to understand what that is. Are you a weekend warrior, kind of like me? Are you an overlander, a jeeper? I don't know. What are those things? It's important to understand what your discipline is so that you know which companies to target and which people to target. And I say people, I mean, in your social media or, what types of events you're going to. So I think that's pretty important to understand what that is. And you need to be able to define that and talk about it. If you're pitching something to a sponsor and you don't know what that is, it's difficult to explain. Next thing is, will your brand evolve over time? And are you okay with sharing that experience? So that means, let's say you're in it for the long haul, right? You are a supercross racer right now and you're just crushing it. You're in fantastic shape, maybe like mid to late 20s, maybe you're in your peak and something starts happening. Maybe your body starts degrading over time. You get tired, maybe you get injured. And that this at some point is going to happen. Other than Tom Brady, all of us age. And at some point we're going to slow down. So, what's the next step? Are you going to now transition into UTV in the next 5 years with a cage? Or I've seen a lot of people doing a transition into, say, monster trucks, right? If you're going to do that transition, which partners can you take along that path with you? So you can map that out, right? You can take some time and think about, all right, how much longer do I have doing a very physical race activity, and then what am I going to transition into after that, and which partners can take me there. So let's just say something everybody knows, Monster Energy. If you take a Monster Energy partner as a supercross racer, it's pretty likely you're going to be able to transition them into some other type of sport because of the wide reach that they have. But if it's, let's say, Pro Taper, which is a handlebar company, they might not be interested in working with you if you transition into, a Jeep type activity, right? It just might not make as much sense for them to do that transition. So either way, I think it's important to understand, will your brand evolve over time? And, the next piece here is, are you okay with sharing that experience? The reason I say that is because you kind of put yourself out there when you go into the sponsorship world. People love the experience, they love the story, but that also means you have to be willing to tell it. Are you okay saying, hey, I got a little older, I couldn't quite keep up with the same physical demands, or hey, I got hurt and, the recovery didn't go as planned, so I could never get back into the way I was. Like, are you okay with that? I think it's interesting. I think it drives a lot of, positive exposure for you and for your brand, but you have to be okay with sharing it as you evolve. The next piece here is just around knowing your brand, is what colors or symbols represent you. Are you willing to take the time to figure that out and create consistency across how your brand is portrayed, whether it's on your machine or your social media or clothing, or if you do a YouTube channel, whatever. If you look at the Sponsored Rider Club podcast brand, there's a couple of colors that you'll see consistently used throughout the website and the logo and things like that. And that took some time to figure out what that was going to be, and then to make sure that every other platform that I use has some of those same consistency. So my intent with that is, okay, if you go to my website, and then if you go to my Facebook page, that you're going to be able to tell that's the same producer, I guess. But I think it takes a little bit of time to figure that out. So, point one here, knowing your brand, you have to take some energy, you have to take some time and devote it to figuring that out and being able to communicate it. So that's the first point that I really wanted to talk about around what it takes to be a motorsports sponsorship representative. All right, the next point that I want to hit here before I go into my break here for the sponsors is the commitment to social media. This could potentially be the biggest scare point for riders and racers out there. Social media can be a big and scary thing. It can also be very rewarding, right? That, again, I'm going to talk about the rewards later, but it can be scary. It takes time. And when I say it takes time, that means you're putting together in most cases, at least one post per day on each social media platform that you choose to be on. I'd say minimum, that means Instagram right now. I do a lot of polling with people that, listen to the show and to partake in the show, and Instagram is like where it is at right now. Right now is I'm recording this in May of 2019, so that's where it's at right now. Very likely Facebook and YouTube are things that are on your mind. Also, most people that are on Instagram right now do partake in Facebook. Facebook is still, I think, 2.4 billion users strong, so there's a lot going on there. But those two platforms there, Facebook and YouTube, complement Instagram pretty nicely. Maybe you're on Twitter. I don't know. Twitter, I'm on it. I don't put much effort into it compared to the other platforms, but every now and then I'll get a post that does really well, 300-400 likes. And I don't know, I haven't figured out the formula yet, but maybe you're there. You might be considering Snapchat or TikTok or any of the other emerging platforms. But no matter what, it just takes time to figure out what you're going to post, when you're going to post it, what your copy is going to be. For people who don't know, copy is the fun marketing term for, the words that you put into your post. What links are you going to put on there? Like, do you have a sponsor promo you need to do this day or this week? It takes a lot of time. So that's just getting your posts together. The next thing that social media drives is you have to engage with your fans or your audience or, other people that you want to be engaging with your brand. So that means you have to scroll through feeds. You've got to follow people. You've got to like things. You've got to unfollow people that don't really fit with your brand. Like, it takes a decent amount of energy. I'm not sure what amount of time I spend on this. I used to track it a little bit more closely, but for my social media, which I don't think I'm really good at, I think that I really struggle with social media. I still probably spend like an hour a day, which maybe to other people listening, that might not seem like much. And maybe that's why I'm not getting as far as I should in social media. But, I think I spend about an hour a day, and that is huge for me. I'm the type of person that I map out literally like everything that I do. I've got a set time that I'm going to shower. I've got a set time that I'm going to drink my coffee in the morning. Like, I have all of that mapped out. So to take an hour for social media is a lot. Now, I don't do it all in one segment, but I think it adds up over time. I've heard people on the show before, they say 6 to 7 hours worth of social media each day because they run a business off of it or whatever it may be. There's a lot of investment there. So you have to be ready for that commitment. I'll be honest with you, if you're going to be successful in the world of motorsports sponsorship right now in this day and age, you have to be active on social media. Sorry. Like, this will help you make that decision. If you don't want to engage in social media, then motorsports sponsorship will always have some limitations for you. That's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. This is your decision. I just need to talk about it. Like, it's important. So other things around the commitment to social media, you do have to focus on engagement and growth. Posting without a purpose or a strategy is not as likely to produce the results that your sponsors want. You have to commit to devoting mental energy to that, to figuring out what you're going to post, when you're going to post, figuring out what your audience likes and doesn't like. Random pictures can be successful, but it's likely that they could drive people away. So you have to be cautious about what you're posting and when you're posting it. You do have to view social media as a tool. Sometimes you're not going to want to post, or you're not going to want to create the content to post. If you truly love the content creation and sharing aspects, then this is likely not going to be an issue for you. But at some point, inevitably, you will grow tired of the process and you're going to need to push through it. Sometimes I look at my social media, I'm like, gosh, I just want to smash social media right now. Or maybe I put a bunch of energy into a post and it flopped. And like, oh my gosh, what did I do? But again, it's important to your sponsors and it's important to your brand. You have to push through that. When I say push through, I typically mean view the positive side of it, like what's fun about this. Obsessing over how much engagement you have is not healthy. So I don't want you to take that approach, but at least paying attention to if something flopped or did well, and like what does that mean for your next post, I think is important to do. But view it as a tool, not as a burden, and I think you'll be okay there. But it will happen where you're going to look at something and be like, oh, I just don't want to do this right now, and that's okay. We all go through it. The next piece here is, around the commitment to social media, is avoiding political or other controversial posts. Now, I do have a quick caveat before I go into this segment a little bit more. Some brands might be able to work with this. Okay, so this can't be an all-inclusive statement, but those brands are likely the minority. Meaning there might be some people who are like, they're really strong advocates for, maybe one political thing or one type of statement. I'm just not, there's not many of them out there, right? So I'm going to caution against that approach. If there are enough scenarios out there that I can't predict, there's enough things that could happen. I can't fully condemn this, but the odds are pretty high that people aren't going to support when you get highly political or you have really controversial posts. So if you do that, I would recommend, clearing it with your sponsors first. Say hey, I've got this specific opinion, freedom of speech is full and real, and you should take advantage of it. But just check if your sponsor's okay with it. Do they have similar opinions? Maybe it's fine. Maybe they're going to support it and back you. It's worth asking that question before just posting something, because you could put them in a bad spot. Or if you have a separate page, maybe an anonymous page or a different Facebook group or a forum or something. Maybe you are anonymous in that and your sponsors aren't linked to it, then that might be another option for you to voice those opinions. So my point here is that I don't want you to feel like entering into motorsports sponsorship means that you can no longer voice your political opinions or your controversial opinions. But it does change the way that you need to be thinking about those things. You have to put some forethought into it before just posting something that might be on your mind. Because the sponsors do read that. You are connected to them. You are in some way representing who they are too and representing their values. So just be cautious of that if you're choosing to make those posts. Most people that I talk to on this show or about the show or behind the scenes, they say that they go to that approach where they have a separate or an anonymous page to voice those opinions. So that's a good option overall. All right, well, so that's the first 2 points there that I want to make: knowing your brand and the commitment to social media. And that's some of the things that it takes to, excel, in my opinion, in motorsport sponsorship. But right now I want to take a quick break, and then we're going to thank the sponsors for the show, and then we'll come back into the next points.
Hey guys, George Hamill here to talk about SolderWeld's new off-road repair kit. If you're a racer of any type or an off-road enthusiast like myself, you're going to want to take a close look at this product that bonds metal on the spot. SolderWeld has combined some of their most elite products into one small kit that fits perfectly under your seat or strapped to a roll cage and allows you to make some insane fixes anywhere you go. How many of us have been in a race or out on the trail and got a rock chip in a radiator or brake line? We have seen a top-tier desert race team at the 2019 Min 400 taken out by a simple rock to the radiator. If they had an off-road repair kit on board, they could have been back up and running in just minutes. The kit includes everything you need to work on dirty aluminum, stainless steel, copper, and many other metals. SolderWeld's cutting-edge technology allows you to make these fixes with extremely low heat and incredibly high tensile strength, leaving you a lasting fix every time. Don't be that guy broke down on the side of the trail. Get your off-road repair kit today, and your friends will thank you.
Family race team. Those are the first words that come to mind when I think of Bold Racing. And the next one is actually axles. Bold Racing is a premier distributor of GSP XTV axles. And if that wasn't cool enough, they just came out with an entirely new axle called the Revolution axle. It is a hollow tube axle. It's really cool. If you head over to their website, gspxtv.com, or you can find out more at boldracing.com. AMSOILLTD.com. You can find out how this new axle technology works. So they are saying to view this as a fuse for your drivetrain. So the hollow tube CV axle twist technology actually increases the strength and reliability of the axle, and it also reduces stress on the drivetrain. Plus, honestly, it's super cool looking, and if people know me, they know that I really like cool looking stuff. So they come in this really cool gold color. Check it out. It's absolutely revolutionary. Let's talk about AMSOIL. Maybe you've seen them at Sturgis or the AMSOIL Championship Snowcross Series, maybe your local track. Maybe you heard about them on this show. They are all over the power sports world, and here is why they get it. They're a bunch of gearheads just like you and I. They're riders, they're racers, just like us. They're also chemists and engineers, which means they're good at making synthetic oil. That's what we want them to be good at. Their time at the track and on the streets, it gives them that first-hand knowledge of how tough equipment is on oil. Extreme heat, increased stress, high RPM riding, it all works against you and your ride to basically get you sidelined. But no worry, AMSOIL handcrafts synthetic lubricants that fight wear and resist extreme heat so that you can get the most power and best performance out of whatever it is that you ride. Visit amsoil.com/rider for more details and check out their full line of products for anything that you ride. Safety is our overriding priority. I hear it all the time, but I have to ask myself, is it though? Is that the first thing we think of? Is that the first thing you think of? Over the past couple of years, we've seen the performance of production UTVs increase, somewhere around 350%. That means these machines give us a lot more opportunity to have fun and win races, but it also, unfortunately, gives us new opportunities to crash. And that's why we have partnered with Crash Addict Industries. The owner, Travis Pointer, became very accustomed to crashing early in his career. He saw it as inevitable, and he set out to make the process safer. With a passion for racing, welding, and engineering, Crash Addict Industries now produces full cage and other protection systems intentionally designed to protect you during an accident on the track. They also offer a line of human protection products through their vendors. Do this for me at this point. If you're racing with a stock cage right now, please go check out CrashAddict.com and at least see what they have to offer. Even if you choose to go with a different company, please make safety your overriding priority. Two questions I get continuously about this show and about sponsorship is, do I need my own website and do I need a resume? The answer is, in my opinion, yes to both, and that's why we partner with TopThePodium.com. Now, if you want to see an example of what a professional website and what a professional resume looks like, you gotta check out TopThePodium.com. They did my website. The Sponsored Rider Club Podcast website is SponsoredRiderClubPodcast.com. That was created by Jeff Vanistall of TopThePodium.com. I think it's awesome. I get a lot of good feedback about it. And there's a number of other websites out there that Jeff has produced that are just phenomenal. So I think it's important in this world of social media where you have control of your content. That's what a website does. It gives you full control. We don't know what Facebook's going to do sometimes. We don't know what Instagram's going to do. We don't know what Twitter's going to do. So if we don't have that central location to direct people and house our content, there is some risk that we incur. So I strongly recommend getting a website, talking to TopThePodium.com. And then the resume, again, is massive. And if you want to stand out, get it done professionally. And honestly, it is one of the best ways to step up your game and present yourself in the best way possible. All right, welcome back. This is the show where we're talking about, your decision around, is motorsports sponsorship right for you? And, the first segment is a lot more of the challenges, right? Like the commitments, the things that you have to devote energy to. So, right before this break here, we talked about knowing your brand. We talked about commitment to social media. I got 3 more points I want to hit in this segment. And this next one here is commitment to sponsors. What that means is if you are going to play in this world of motorsport sponsorship, you end up making decisions at some point of which brands you want to support and stick with. If you are unsure of the type of product you want to run, let's say it's a helmet, right? Let's say there's a certain type of helmet that you're interested in but not committed to. That might not be the right market or sponsor to target right away. So if you are going to run a fly racing helmet, for example, if you run that and you're sponsored by Fly Racing, you're probably going to need to look at how long you're going to run that before you try something else. If your intent is to try, then I don't recommend going the sponsorship route. I recommend if you're already committed to the brand, then go the sponsorship route. So essentially what I'm saying is avoid brand hopping. So you try the Fly Racing helmet with Fly Racing. They give you this, 50% off discount, something like that, and you use it for 3 races, and you're like, you know what, didn't really like that. I'm going to switch to this Fox helmet. And you make that switch, and then, Fox maybe find out later, or Fly Racing finds out later. You may have just damaged your reputation with 2 brands very quickly. I would recommend, if you wanted a Fox helmet all along, start with them, or try these different helmets without going through the sponsorship path. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But once you make a commitment to a sponsor, the brand hopping circumstance does come up. The scenario does exist, and you need to pay attention to that. So again, my point here is I don't want you to think that you can't try different brands, right? I think that's critical to figuring out what works for your program, what works for you. But if you're going to do that, then I recommend just doing it outside of the sponsorship world first. Figure out what you like. Maybe you work with companies, maybe they're okay with giving you something like that, but it needs to be cleared ahead of time that you are not committed to them yet. Because once you're committed, I think that the brand hopping becomes very visible. And, a lot of the people who work at these companies, they change companies, or they're all connected in some way, shape, or form. So word gets around if you start brand hopping. The next thing here is around commitment to sponsors, awareness of competing brands. And I've talked about this in the show plenty of times before, but it's complicated sometimes. If you take on sponsors that are involved in a lot of different types of applications, sometimes you can bring on a competing brand without knowing it. Okay, so let's say you are working with a snowmobile gear company. So in the winter, you are a snowcross racer, and in the summer, you ride enduro motocross or enduro dirt bikes. Let's say at one point you have this partnership with the snowmobile company and a separate partnership with the motocross company, okay? This makes sense initially for you because the snowmobile company doesn't make anything in the motocross world. The motocross company doesn't make anything in the snowmobile world. But let's say they expand their offering. Maybe both companies expand. But let's just say if either one of those companies then says, hey, we're now going to offer motocross gear, or we're now going to offer snowmobile gear, you now have a decision to make, and it's your responsibility to bring this up and say, okay, well, I was working with both companies, but now they're competing against one another. You have to be aware of that. So if a company you're working with changes their marketing strategy or comes out with a new product, and you continue to market the old product for the other company, like, you've now created a competing brand issue. And the sponsor might not know that. They might be managing 20 different athletes. Maybe it's 100 different athletes. They might not know that, but your audience will know. Like, they'll see it and they'll realize what's going on. So that's another responsibility that you have to take on when you're committing to your sponsors, is to be aware of those competing brands. The bigger the company, the more brands that they're likely to house, the more complicated it might be for you to figure out if the brands are competing or not. So you got to pay attention to that, and it does take energy. And at some point, you might have to act on that. You might have to call up a sponsor and say, hey, one of my other sponsors who's been with me for, 5 years just released a new product that competes with yours. I love your stuff, but, I've only been with you for 1 year, 2 years. I do need to make the decision now to go that route with their new product and work with them. I really love your stuff, but I apologize, I can't continue working with you. Like that's a tough conversation to have, but that's part of being committed to your sponsors. You have to figure that out and make that decision. The next piece here is business savviness. I don't know if that's a word or not, but hey, we're going with it. I think you need to develop a level of business acumen if you're going to be successful in motorsport sponsorship, which again, it means devoting some energy into learning and understanding marketing campaigns and knowing how businesses functions. That's something you have to be willing to do. You have to figure out what some terms mean, like marketing strategy, ROI, which is return on investment, valuation, reach, engagement. You get a lot of that from listening to the show. You can also get a lot of that from talking to your sponsors and asking them, what are you trying to do with your program right now? But again, this is a process that takes energy. It's a learning process, and then you have to now be committed to talking that way when you're communicating with your sponsors or certain representatives of companies. This becomes even more critical as the company size that you're working with gets a little bit bigger, because let's say if you're working with a small company, you might be directly connected with the owner, or one or two employees that are part of that company. They wear multiple hats, so they're more comfortable talking in more broad terms. When you get into bigger companies, you get people that are more specialized in their communication, which means that they're going to be more specialized in the words that they use when they're talking to you. So you might be working with a big company that has a person that's just social media focused, and you have a person that is, just valuation focused, in which case they're going to be using terms that are a lot more specific. So you have to be willing to develop the business savviness as well. Okay, so that was point 4, business savvy. Point 5 is transparency. Okay, this is what, I don't know. This is where you're really putting yourself out there. I talked about it a little bit earlier around, sharing your journey and being comfortable with that. But honestly, with this point here, I'm just hammering it home. Your race results are always out there. Your, performance is always out there. Your health, in many cases, is always out there. Especially if you're a racer, right? People are paying attention. Did you get hurt? How bad was it? When is your recovery time? Are you going to recover? All of these things get put out there. Oh, you got a 5th place finish instead of a 3rd place finish? Wow, now I'm going to judge you for that, right? To an extent, this happens. Now, I also truly think that the motorsports community is one of the most supportive groups out there. I don't know if I've seen any other community that is as supportive, so it's a good sign, right? But you just have to be willing to put it all out there. Again, I think this is a good thing. I think transparency is really cool, but it just means that you have to be okay with that. So if you're not okay with it, then motorsports sponsorship might not be the right thing for you. Okay, well that was a lot initially. So since you've made it this far, you already know what it takes. Next, I want to remind you and talk about some of the benefits that comes along with this. The benefits, okay? The benefits are huge with this, okay? This is going to be the hardest part for me, honestly, is explaining how rewarding this whole process can be. Everything I talked to you up to this point, I wanted to see, will you make it this far? Are you committed to even listening to the rest of the show? Because then the good stuff comes, right? First off here, I think that it's a very rewarding experience. I'm going to break that rewarding experience down into essentially 3 main parts, okay? The first one is being part of something bigger than yourself. You expand your impact when you take on sponsorships. You become part of a bigger network, and you take on accountability for making motorsports successful. I view that as my role with the show, as I'm trying to grow motorsports in general. My vision is a little bit bigger than just, the day in, day out activities of the show. I want to make motorsport sponsorship a key point in growth for the segment. But I view that as, my impact on a bigger world. You become part of the growth strategy for yourself, your sponsors, and your industry when you jump into motorsport sponsorship. And I see a lot of people do fantastic at like taking on this bigger role and just thriving in it. So that's a huge benefit. Just picturing that you are no longer an individual that's, grassroots racer or whatever, like you are part of the growth strategy for the entire industry. Huge benefit. Companies love this too. Feeling like you're part of that company is huge, right? Or maybe you have 5, 6, 7 companies that you're working with, or you're like Walker Fowler, right, where you've got 36 companies, right? You start becoming part of a massive movement, a massive thing, and that's pretty rewarding in my opinion. So yeah, being part of something bigger than yourself is a huge benefit to motorsport sponsorship. The next one, pretty obvious here. I talk about it constantly on the show. Amazing relationships. And I use the word amazing on purpose because the motorsports community is just so unique from what I can tell. Like, everybody is nice. I mean, I have been doing this show for, 2.5 years or something, and I get tons of positive feedback from the community, tons of positive support. I don't get a lot of haters right now. I mean, there are haters out there, and I've had to deal with some, weird situations, but like, gosh, people are so supportive in this community. You watch races and you see someone wreck and you see another racer helping them out, or, you see a pit crew going to help another pit crew. Like, it's a different level of support. And that comes from the basis of amazing relationships. Connections with sponsors open you up to all sorts of other collaborations, partnerships, and experiences. You meet people that you never would have met before, and that is truly amazing. All right, the next point here is financial flexibility. So a lot of people that listen to this show or partake in motorsport sponsorship, they do it for a very obvious fact that this is an expensive sport that we partake in. This is the most obvious point that I'll probably ever make in this show, right? It is very difficult to fund all these activities yourself, whether you're a backcountry rider or, you're running at a drag race where it's $15,000 in spark plugs that you're, having to spend each year. Like, it is just a huge financial investment. And when you have financial support from businesses, your options, your reach, your potential increases significantly. Again, it seems obvious, but until you experience it and reflect on it, it's truly hard to comprehend the impact. So these 3 points I just summarized in a couple of minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, whereas, it took me, I don't know how many minutes, 20, 30 minutes to go through the other stuff. But like, it is just so rewarding. I don't know how else to put it into words of how, choosing to come into motorsport sponsorship, being a part of this community, committing all that energy that we talked about up above, how that can really just feel so good. So back to when I first started this show here, and when I say this show, I mean this episode. I said that I had a conversation with somebody that really sparked me having this show, like breaking out the specific what it takes and what the benefits are. And during that conversation, I reflected on myself. I was like, well, why do I do this, right? Why do I partake in all this? I'm exhausted sometimes going through and trying to create these shows and, make sure all my sponsors have all their things covered and trying to grow their business, trying to grow the show. I'm like, gosh, shouldn't I just like do my own thing and, at night when the kids go to bed, like me go to bed too, right? That would be kind of nice. But I was like, gosh, the benefits though are just so massive. Like, I feel all of these 3 elements, these relationships, being part of something bigger, the financial flexibility, all those things are just worth it to me. So that's the thing that I want to leave you with here is all of this worth it to you? Whether you're, first time into sponsorship or you've been doing this for years, like, do you want to start? Does all this stuff resonate with you? And you're like, yeah, I can do that. I'm ready. Or are you listening? You're like, yeah, I've been doing this and I felt the exhaustion, and yes, I'm going to continue because it's just so amazing. So that's it. That's what I'm going to leave you with, is that decision. Is motorsports sponsorship right for you? I can't pick for you. All I can do is kind of show you the path and give you the information so you can make that decision. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by 4-Wheel Parts. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of our upcoming shows. Follow us on social media as well. That's where we share a lot of information and upcoming guests for the show. Pay specific attention to our Facebook page. That's where we do our live shows 2 each month. To get some insider access and upcoming guests, you can also check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook. That also offers a forum for best practices sharing, so you can ask questions and get answers from the motorsports community. A special thanks goes out to our sponsors, 4-Wheel Parts, AMSOIL, SolderWeld, Bold Racing, TopThePodium.com, and Crash Addict Industries. I also want to shout out some of our other partners, GSP XTV, MBRP, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, Diode Dynamics, and High Octane Coffee. I look forward to serving you again next week. Until then, have fun and ride safe.